So, everyone, welcome back. This is another episode of Regulatory Tuesday, and I wanted you to see this headline. Now, this headline is actually a little misleading. I'm going to actually talk to you about this, and it is pretty bad, but not quite this bad. So, the truth is that California schools have a new law that will be going into effect pretty much for the school year 2018. Back in 2015, California enacted the California Health Youth Act, which now requires gender and sexual orientation studies as part of health class and part of sex education. Now, the California law requires that a study guide for transgender children be used. It's a book called I Am Jazz, as well as a sexual health toolkit, which was funded by the George Soros program Tide Centers, which offers tips for kids on use of sex toys, anal lubricant. It defines anal intercourse, phone sex, and more common sexual behaviors. It also teaches that abstinence is difficult and requires you to have willpower, and that virginity means pretty much everything short of penile vaginal penetration, instead of the more classic sense of not actually engaging in sexual activities. It also discusses how to use food items as sex toys and teaches that abstinence is difficult for both parties to actually participate in. You know, the thing that human beings have been doing for centuries. Um, this toolkit also lists resources for Planned Parenthood and the radical pro homosexuality, pro abortion group youth advocates of for youth. Lawmakers made this mandatory as part of health, not sex ed. And so parents aren't being allowed to opt their children out of this section of sex ed in California schools now. Now, this law didn't take effect until early this year, end of March, beginning of April, and won't really go into operation until later this year when the California school district goes back into session. But right here it says parents who disagree with the state's LGBT position may not excuse their children from this instruction. He suggests that parents still having the right to advise their children that they disagree with such lessons compensates for this restriction. This has not been how the law has been ruled on in the past, and this is why people can opt their children out of sex education and certain other types of health classes. And it seems that Commiefornia has overstepped its bounds yet again. And I expect this to be challenged in court outside of the Ninth Circuit and making it all the way up to the Supreme Court yet again, because things like this are definitively attempts at indoctrination. And the fact that their children cannot be opted out shows that this is a fundamental lack of respect for the student, for the parent, and for the natural order of society, and is more a push at an agenda of the LGBTQ persuasion. Now, St. John's advises California parents to contact their local school board and Democrat Assemblywoman Shirley Weber, the law's author, and to pull their children out of schools that force LGBT lessons on children. She also urges parents to participate in the Sex Ed Sit Out on April 23rd, which has already passed, unfortunately. But there's a lot of other things that can be pushed at this point. The big thing is that this is going to be the norm in California schools from now on. Now, here's also an article from the Daily Caller, which talks about it yet again. Once again, the law gives the parent the ability to. But so, the law means that the students and allow for an objective discussion about parenting, abortion, and adoption. However, they have created a new law that doesn't. So even the Daily Caller is not really on board with this and has shown that this is not exactly what people should be reading. Now, they didn't take it as far as, the USA Today here, which actually showed some details on this. I really wish that they had, because, the Daily Caller is known for, some pretty extremist views, and I would have liked to have seen what their ideas were. Uh, Here's the deal. If you're a parent in California, especially in the Orange County area where they're telling you that your child cannot opt out of this, then perhaps you need to go to your school board and have your school board replaced. And you need to have your principals and your superintendents replaced. And if you're not from California and you're listening to this and your schools start talking about bringing in a superintendent or principals from California, this is what they're bringing in. Don't let them. Well, I want to thank you all again for joining me. I am going to include the links down below to the news sources that I pulled this information from. I hope that this is not new information for those of you in California school districts. Unfortunately, I'm betting it is still, because I'm betting a lot of this didn't get discussed with you, especially if your kids weren't in a sex ed class last year, but might be this year or the next year after. This is insane. This really is. This is sexualization of kids on a level that is bordering on disturbing. And they keep pushing it. I mean, we're hearing now from Democrats out of California that abstinence isn't an effective method of birth control. Because, not having sex means that you can still get pregnant, at least according to these people. Well, thank you all again, and have yourselves a lovely day.